Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZaAli. Today is Friday, May 20th, 2022. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. Thank you so much for lending me your time and your mind and your energy today. Um, I have a few things that I want to discuss. I'm going to try to keep this as short and concise as I possibly can. As you guys know, I've been talking about this sovereignty of self course for women that I launched, and that is, going great. But that subject matter outside of the course and, my promotion of that course, I feel like it really needs to be explored in depth, particularly because, the conversation about sovereignty now is expanding on multiple layers, which is what we're going to talk about. So, my aim is to keep the videos shorter than 30 minutes. This is probably going to be a two-part video. And this is kind of my, showing you guys what I'm going to be doing consistently on my subscription based page on my channel. I'm getting ready to move all of my content in that direction for multiple reasons, which I've talked about, but more on that later. So today, like I said, sovereignty of self. Real quick, hopefully most of you guys know I am a writer, and I have written two books: Black Matters, Volume One and Volume Two, The Scientific Intervention in Our Affairs, as well as Plagues of Dysfunction. I've written four metaphysics workbooks: The Science of Sex, The Science of Self, Dealing with the Mind, Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance, and Keys to Womanhood, What Every Young Lady and Woman Should Know. On my website, ZaZaAli.com, you can access my courses and workshops, and also as well, and not as well, but my blogs and other information. And if you want to work with me, I do consultations and I also work with clients privately to help them get clarity and to sort of graduate to the next level of themselves. So if you are interested in that, you can email me at info@zazaali.com. All right, so as I have been talking about in the last couple of videos, in Geneva, Switzerland, starting on May 22nd through May 28th, 193 countries or nations, I should say, that are a part of the United Nations are going to be meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. And basically, they're going to be voting. I think, it's already decided in terms of, the bigger scheme of things. But the purpose of this meeting is to vote on giving WHO or WHO authority to basically become the supreme governor of all of these 193 nations, and by default, all nations, because who would be able to stand up to them? What country or what nation would be able to maintain its sovereignty outside of the scope of this agenda? When there's 193 other nations on the team, right? But the Biden administration obviously is already, actively engaging and pursuing in this initiative, and it's not the what they're saying that it's about is that if we have another, global national health emergency, cough cough, um, that there is a stipulation in place where the WHO can basically intervene and start to govern these nations or all nations, as well as make primary decisions in a health emergency sort of situation. Now, any conspiracy theorists worth their weight, I don't even know if I should say that word. The algorithm and artificial intelligence is listening, but any conspiracy theorist that is worth their weight will tell you that for the last, 30, 40, 50 years, there have been plenty of teachers. And it always, I kind of, cringe on the inside when I hear people on their videos say, nobody's talking about this. No, a lot of people are talking about this. It's just that not a lot of people are listening. And, there have been plenty of people that have written books that have, been putting out content, doing lectures around the world. Like, this is not a new thing. So I know, in the world of social media, everybody wants to be the first one to break the story, or everybody wants to, be the one who knows it all. No, there is a long line of hundreds and thousands of people that have been researching, going down the rabbit hole. You know, many people lost their lives, right? Remember when all of those holistic doctors came up dead over the course of a 2 to 3 year period? Well, now that's starting to make a little bit more sense. What did those people know? What information did they have access to that we don't, right? But this vote is coming up. And for all intents and purposes, based on what I've seen, I think at least from their vantage point, that vote has already been decided. Everything basically points to what they've done, what they're doing, and what their agenda is. That was the initial goal overall, to have a one world government. Um, and so we now have, billions of people that have, based out of fear, based out of ignorance, based out of, lack of health, lack of personal maintenance and well being. And that's, very important for us to consider now as we talk about being sovereign, right? And governing yourself. We're in this condition now because people have not been conscientiously governing themselves. And we live in a world where people want to eat Popeye's chicken and pork chops and, you know, put all of this depravity in their bodies. But then when it's time, when there is a, potential threat on the horizon, or if, the world is focused on illness, so to speak, I'm being careful with my language. We want to run to the doctor and get a quick fix, which I believe is extremely offensive to the creator because the earth has everything that we need to maintain and sustain us. Not only the earth, but the human body is such a marvelous, immaculate, powerful, you know, machine and vehicle for our souls to kind of operate and navigate on this planet. And for us to treat it so ridiculously disrespectful, to not take care of ourselves, to not do the basic things, eating fruits and vegetables and, being plant based, or at least being conscientious about being plant based. Um, but then when everything kind of comes to the surface, everybody wants to run out and get a quick fix, right? Well, that's the ways of old. But that type of mindset and that type of thinking is not going to serve you or any of us moving forward. So, sovereignty, what does that mean? What does that word mean? You hear people talk about it a lot, uh, throwing the word around, and um, I don't think people really look at sovereignty from an internal perspective. We look at sovereignty as a what's going on out there, i.e., getting your paperwork together, right? Being a traveling man, quote unquote. Um, you know, expecting governments and these institutions to abide by their own goals, right? Or their own legality, their own legalese, I should say. The language they put forward to enslave people is the language that we are now, or certain subsets of us are expecting for them to stay true to, right? In the midst of all of this chaos. So I'm saying this to say that, well, let me read the definition of sovereignty, and this will kind of bring things into full perspective. So, sovereignty is defined as supreme power or authority. It is the authority of a state to govern itself or another state, and it is a self governing state, right? And so you have that aspect, and then you have, the paperwork movement, right? Um, Understanding that you are not, a legal entity, so to speak, born enslaved through your birth certificate and social security numbers and all of that stuff. Like, that's a level of this, and that's relative to a certain degree. But when you start operating in the world from a spiritual perspective, you understand that real sovereignty is in the mind, and that your energy and your focus and your mentality, because we live in a mental world, is what's actually creating your reality, right? So when you guys hear me say all the time, or say, we go on quantum, What that means is that we're moving into a time dispensation where the the oligarchies or the powers that be, their time for ruling is up. Everything that's happened in the past, 500 years, and then, 2,000 years, and then 6,000 years, we have these increments of time that we look to, in terms of scaling back history, right? We have slavery, we have the quote unquote Holocaust, um, we have the Industrial Revolution, we have, the Civil War in America, right? We've had all of these kind of marking points in time, tragedies, travesties, you know, upward ticks in consciousness, desocialization, devaluation of consciousness, civilization, and then mass quantities of uncivilized nations. And when I say uncivilized, I'm not just talking about, this social media world today where, it seems like ignorance and insanity is running rampant, and it is. But I'm also talking about those hundreds of years of time frames when Africans were put on ships and shipped across the world, and nobody around the world intervened. Africans didn't even intervene. So looking at, these satanic entities, right? Satanic elements, the powers that be. We've all heard about like sex trafficking and Satanism, and yes, the people who are making the decisions and calling the shots, the people that are going to be, present in Geneva, Switzerland for this vote, the people that make the laws, the people that came up with the toxicity, the formula that people are putting in their arms now, having no clue what it's doing to their bodies and what it's going to do to their bodies in the future. These are very evil and wicked people. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately because I know and understand that they're harnessing human energy. So with mass shootings, they're harnessing human energy. CNN, MSNBC, BBC, all these entities that you guys tune into for programming, they're harnessing your energy. Because as long as you're tuned in and buying the the you know the narrative, the narrative and the agenda are two totally different things. Please understand. As long as you're buying into the narrative, you're not sovereign. As long as you're waiting for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to do anything for you, you're not sovereign. As long as you're riding the frequency of self-doubt and fear and inner turmoil and chaos, not only are you not sovereign, but you're in alignment with the intentions and the energy of these people, which makes you a non-viable threat, which makes you a not a threat. Non-viable threat, is that how I want to say that? I mean, I think you guys get the point. They're not concerned about people that do not have control and sovereignty over their mind. So how is it possible that there could be a meeting of such substantial implications taking place in this day and time with everything that's happened to us over the past 2 years, and people don't even have a clue, aren't even interested? So some people will say, and I get this a lot, okay, I'm tired of talking about the problem. What's the solution? Okay, Zaza, you're bringing this information to us. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how that applies to my life. What is the solution? That's the problem. People still sitting back and waiting for someone else to construct the solution. When do you come up with a solution? What's your solution to any of this? We've created mentally and emotionally and spiritually stagnant people that are just used to sitting up and listening to content online and developing, opinions or thoughts, maybe not even developing them, taking on the opinions and thoughts of others. That's why that whole situation, me doing those videos about Kevin Samuels and the it's the responses. that were very alarming for me. Some of them I left on my page, but the disrespect had to be deleted and blocked. So now we want to rewrite history. We want to change the course of something that we can all see plain as day with our own two eyes. I showed it in the video. And people are still argumentative about why it's their right to accept that, or I'm not telling the entire story that, hey, listen, you like it, I love it. The people get the leaders they deserve. So, what's the solution? You tell us. What's your plan? And everybody's talking about food shortages, right? Emergency planning, all of that stuff. So, yeah, we don't need to revisit that. All of those things are extremely important right now because this is not a game. This is not a joke. This is not a simulation, at least from third dimensional reality perspective. We're in this. You're alive right now. You're listening to my voice. Obviously, you have some sort of consciousness and awareness because we all know this isn't the page to come to talk about celebrity gossip or, regurgitating the things that are being spoken on mainstream media. Politics is dead. Government is dead. When I say we're in the quantum realm, this is just the residual of all of the choices and decisions that have been made that we're facing right now. This is the after effect. This world was created in the minds and the hearts of the people 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 months ago, 2 days ago. So if that's how the building blocks of life in the universe work, which it is, then my question for you, and then my question for all of us, including myself, is what is the dispensation of your mentality, your mindset, your overall frequency, your energetic countenance today in this space time? Because that's what's actually going to create our tomorrow. I'm not looking at these people and their agenda and their intentions as if they are the end all be all powerful, all knowing. No, Lucifer had a certain amount of time to rule because you have the freedom and the ability to be ruled by your lower self. It's a microcosm of the macrocosm. You can choose slavery. You can choose to walk down to a doctor or to a local clinic and have poison put in your arms without doing any investigation, negotiation, your third eye's not operating. You didn't see this coming because your connection to source energy, your intuition, your ability to step outside of the world and see things from your personal soul essence, internal being. Most people don't have access to that. You're not connected to that anymore. In the Bible, one of the first commandments that's written in the book of Genesis, the creator says, be fruitful and multiply, right? And religion has limited the capability of the minds of humanity to such an extent that we've wrapped that commandment, if you will, up to mean have children, reproduce yourself physically. And it does. And that's really one of our most important, things to strive for while we're here. It's not a burden. Y'all make it seem like it's a burden. I had a whole back and forth with someone on my I didn't have a back and forth. I just was reading his comments with my eyes, like a deer in headlights, talking about men don't want women who have children. No real man is going to step into a woman's life and take care of another man's child. You need to find a way to work that out. You, meaning whatever women he's talking about. You need to find a way to work that out with that man because no other man. I mean, you think about that's reptilian brain. energy, basic fight or flight, food, clothing, and shelter. That's all you think about. So when the commandment says be fruitful and multiply, it's not just talking about having children or reproducing yourself, it's talking about multiplying your mind, creating and expanding consciousness, expanding third dimensional reality, being a creator. Your energetic resonance when you're moving out into the world. What's the message that you're giving? Especially if you're on YouTube typing dissertations about, no, there's nothing rooted in a perspective from a man or a woman that comes from that space. That's lack based consciousness. How dare you judge a child? How dare you project that negative energy towards an innocent child? Even if you feel that way, keep it to yourself. This is why God is allowing the creator, the universe, source energy, divine consciousness, whatever you feel comfortable with. I'm okay with it all. But this is why this world is being allowed to be destroyed because of that weak minded, simple minded space of consciousness. We're supposed to be creating worlds, and everything in this reality is about contrast and not expansion. So in the movies and on television and television shows, I keep seeing this repeating, recurring. They're throwing in conversations about parallel universes, right? So anyone who has done a basic analysis of quantum physics knows that basically your observation of reality is what's creating reality. And so, according to this theory about the parallel universe, that once your soul or your being makes a choice, a decision to go left or to go right at whatever pivotal point in your life, there's the you that makes the choice to go left, but then there's another you that makes the choice to go right, that's living in a parallel universe, still existing based on that original decision that offshot that consciousness or that person into a different space of consciousness, physical reality, whatever, right? Now, you know, this is all based on original scientific research studying atoms and studying the consciousness of atoms and how even the life form, atoms being the building blocks of reality, right? Those building blocks of reality, once they are observed, once you're paying attention to it, it does what you expect it to do. It's operating based on your state of consciousness, and that space within yourself as well as the collective consciousness is what's actually creating our physical reality. And so when you start getting into parallel universes, and I don't want to go to, when I start the subscription channel, I'm going to really be able to sit down and go into, the real science of this stuff. This is what I love to do. I could do this with my eyes closed. I love to talk about, going into the cracks and crevices of humanity and of God and our reason for being here and making all of this make sense, right? But in terms of how Hollywood is maneuvering and playing with these concepts of a parallel universe, it's not to get your mind open in terms of, fifth dimensional reality or evolving to start to look at the world from a conscious space, understanding your power of consciously creating reality. You know, it's not about any of that. It's about getting you to accept a digital twin and existing in two different spaces of consciousness at the same time without questioning the difference. So now when you go on social media, when you go on Instagram or Facebook, or, especially if you're a content creator, or, you use your pages to bring attention to your brand or your business or yourself, that dopamine kicks in, that hormone is released into the bloodstream, that pleasure principle, just from you being able to engage and interact with the world through a phone or an iPad. So, existing in two different spaces of consciousness, being in the physical realm, but being able to put your metaverse glasses on and to go into a different time space dispensation, and not complain about the fact that your real life is not as fascinating as as your world in the metaverse. Actively engaging in a false sense of reality, but creating money that you can use and transfer and juggle in a false sense of reality, when there's so much suffering and struggling in the physical world that we live in. Why haven't we found a way to create a financial system that can exist in the physical world and assist with homelessness, and assist with starvation and struggling and suffering? So them putting this imagery and this conversation about the parallel universe into a world where the masses are suffering from brave ignorance. Y'all are bravely ignorant. Not y'all like, my followers, but the collective consciousness. I'm very disappointed as a human being. A couple of people took offense, thought I was saying that Black people have created weak men and weak women. Well, let's be clear. And I don't remember exactly how I said it, but if I didn't term it the right way, I was not talking about specifically Black people. I'm talking about the world. 8 billion strong, completely laid down, showed no defense mechanism, showed no infrastructural internal power in terms of mass consciousness, didn't stand up to the narrative, didn't question the narrative. For me and for a lot of other people, that word is contextual, right? Out of 8 billion, is 144,000 really not a lot? No, not really, but, for context. And now here we are, where the continuation of this agenda, this wicked, evil, demonic agenda, is taking place on our planet as I look outside in Los Angeles, California, to a pitch white sky. But we're not paying attention to what's happening in our physical reality because we're obsessed with a new dimension of consciousness where everybody is making videos about life instead of living life. People are becoming the avatars, creating a projection, or what you want the world to see per se, manipulating minds and consciousness in the process, but never really getting down to the nitty gritty of the bigger scope of what we're doing here in this time space reality. I'm so disappointed in the spiritual metaphysics community. I can't even, and on a certain level, that's a projection too, right? But I didn't come here to live that type of, spiritual reality where I'm here floating in the clouds while the masses of people are suffering and living in chaotic existences. No, I came here to live. I see, I feel, I love, I'm inquisitive. I'm using my mind all the time. A lot of y'all have shut yours off, and you've also lost contact and connection with being able to connect with your inner being, your intuition, your God consciousness, that knowing without knowing how you know, that faith in the unseen. Calcified pineal glands. Yeah, when people were complaining about fluoride in the water, you should have listened. I haven't been just screaming about aluminum raining down from the sky for the last 10 years for no reason. A whole world happening right in front of us, in front of our eyes, and we don't even see it. That's mass manipulation of consciousness.